Before I say, so this is going, I mean, obviously I'm German, and this is going to be the brutish English what they're about to hear. And it's not just because of my shortcomings, but also because I will have to try to translate Heidegger I use sort of standard translations, but many of them are not good enough. And the they is one of these examples that where the English language just cannot translate, right? The German vernacular into English, which, by the way, maybe this will come back to us when we speak about technology later on, is that many, how we operate in the world now, where we just think we can easily translate any language or transfer any meaning of any language to any other language is not that easily possible. The they or das Man is one of these examples. Now that's, Heidegger uses this, talks about this in Being in Time in Sein und Zeit. And before I say anything about the they or das Man, I should say maybe that Sein und Zeit looks at Dasein, right, which literally means existence, and that this kind of what Heidegger does here is he always begins with the everyday. He looks at tool use and use a hammer, and then he comes up with these notions of ready to hand and present at hand, and he realizes that this is how you have to begin. You begin with the ontic, so-called, and then you sort of almost leap into the ontological and show that there are non-visible phenomena at work that make the world meaningful.
Hello? Hello? I think you might have to click on mute to the right of your name. Oh, hello.
Yeah, I just had to wrestle with the mute button at the bottom. I was using the one on the sidebar. That didn't work. Frank somebody. Hold on here. Computer's flipping out. Please stop. Okay, so his name was Frank something, and I mentioned you, and he knew he added an epilogue, and I rewrote parts of his epilogue. So we were doing like a Deleuze and Guattari thing, going back and forth, rewriting each other's shit. And then, so I think the manuscript. Yeah, I think the manuscript. Yeah, I've read that.
Mike is bringing up the Harlequins.
Oh, yeah.
And then just people's experiences with the Harlequins on their DMT trips and stuff like that.
Ah, right, I know. Michael and I, when he came out here to visit, I remember we were in a bar and we were having a couple beers and we were going back and forth about Harlequins. And we were talking about the history of Harlequins, Harlequin symbolism, and we were going back and forth. I remember Jung used to talk about the Harlequin as a sinister figure from the underworld who doesn't bode well for anyone. Picasso painted a whole bunch of Harlequin paintings, and they're always kind of melancholy, but a lot of them are also sort of the Harlequin is the figure who makes you laugh and breaks up all your notions about how things should be. And Commedia dell'arte in Italy and the Italian puppet theaters, that's where they came from.
And what was the Harlequin before that? It was
I think maybe the shaman initially, and then the sort of clown, the jester, once the shaman gets into a high...
The holy fool.
Am I quiet, am I?
But in context, in editing, it doesn't really work out. It doesn't fit. So you have to be careful that you do not enforce your will and your structure on your material. It has happened to some films where you can tell the footage was squeezed into a form and into a flow of narration that was not within the nature of the footage. You sense it as an audience. And what I'm doing is quite often I consider my footage as if I found it somewhere. Somebody made it. So let's be curious. What's there? What does the material tell you? What does it have to offer? And all of a sudden you discover elements in the in the footage that you would never have discovered if you had a very strong will to enforce.
Am I quiet, am I?
Good
How
boy.
about now?
Got
Oh,
slurps.
you got the fucking room, you Harry?
No slurps.
Yeah, alright.
That's better.
There you go.
Oh, TV, yeah,
GB.
TV.
GB. Not TV. Not
GB.
broken GB, weren't we?
Yep.
In the beginning.
I wasn't.
Chris wasn't.
No, I was
Yeah, you
just
was.
like,
I
I
wasn't,
just
I was called-
appeared, I
Chris-
think.
Chris
about
wasn't in
9
TV.
years ago.
No, but you was like
Kind
telling.
of.
I'm saying
No,
it
he
was
wasn't. He wasn't. He wasn't.
history.
He was one way left GB, man.
He was an
No,
outcast.
who was?
I was a
Chris, yeah.
rogue.
Chris.
Chris
Ah, the
was
rogue.
with GB.
You're the
Everywhere.
1%.
Came in after that, man.
Oh, for fuck's sake! You weren't doing all that art thing then, was you, Chris? Was
What
you?
was that? Doing what art thing then? I was always doing art. What are you on about?
You always chaos.
Oh, yeah, I think
I
always,
remember,
always, yeah.
You're
He wasn't one way
Listen,
wasn't
right?
it?
No, actually, Mulder. Look, listen. Chris B Aftermath is like me, Mongy, Rich,
Oh, Big Chris as well. Wasn't I?
Big Chris.
No, that wasn't GB. That was it.
It was
No, not
Paul.
really.
Take you so long.
Yeah, Head Under.
Yeah.
Who was the other one?
Okay.
What was his
Fucking
name?
hell.
Do you remember his name? Can you remember?
Brick, brick top.
Just one shit after another. Way I look at it.
Or what?
You're
It's like,
prettier than I am.
Well, I've been using like this nightly cream. Right, I'll tell you what.
What was this man protein?
His cream.
Texas, a week, probably.
What, you went against the grain.
Against the fucking grain. No, the difference is, it's a bit
Why?
fucking private. No, it wasn't private. There was enough of us. There was about
Equivalent to Coronation
modern-
Street and Ren and Morty.
Was it
No,
the Modern
Ren
Warfare
Stimpy.
one? You're running up against the walls and stuff like that. Because this one, you just slide in all over the bastard place. I just thought it was fucking a bit weird.
We're gonna do it.
Oh yeah, tell me about it. It's
Yeah.
like I was worrying about.
I did tell you about it.
I know that.
File transfer complete.
Seeing that the world is infinite and that time is also infinite, would you like a cheese and ham Breville?
Why?
A vicious circle which is going into infinity. And having a movement around it, it's like a vicious circle which is going into infinity. And having a movement throughout a movie, very, very elaborately planned until it ends in an infinite circle. That's something which was anticipated for editing.
Infinitely blooming flower.
You know, it suffers from what films often suffer from, which is a certain linearity in themselves, but it plays with it. It plays with that
Oh, this one
ecstasy
is from 2011, 12?
of time. And by the way, Werner Herzog calls film the most ecstatic artistic medium.
Friends over in Kyoto, he's just done this book after Novalis. Flowers like blue grass.
And Chris has a couple of themes.
Just doing this re-render.
So what are those themes, Chris?
So it's in that triptych format, 2006. So it's pretty much a subject kind of giving birth to itself. So it's that's what's going on plastically. That's what it is thematically. Well, it was anyway, because it was a student work. The self is a shade. The head and body are pressing towards the visible. It's about coming into visibility. Middle, the central image is AI. It's using both the panels on the left and on the right. But the AI is trained on the coming into being and then the disintegration of it, and it's almost cancelling itself out. So the left is accelerate itself.
Where have you been? Where have you been?
Working, I've been rendering out.
Oh. So, probably that took a lot of years to finish?
No, the more hardware you have, the faster it is.
I see. I was watching the 2-hour video. Wow, it's kind of the soul of your videos are kind of it's tense.
Tense.
It's really tense, and I think you're putting together bits and pieces of what you see humanity is.
So what we got here is not something that's a proper creation. I've looked at material, a collage of material. They'll pick out bits of rubbish and they'll turn that rubbish into something that resembles like...
Quite tense, very, very tense.
So.
But
I think it's very light-hearted.
It was tense because I remembered a friend of mine from Pakistan. He said, "It's odd how men here are very, very feminine. In Pakistan, when you put prisoners in Pakistan, they would fight each other. They would abuse each other. But the prisoners here, if you could remember, there was like a show."
Was it in Manila or was it Cebu where they did all the dancing?
Yeah, and when you were showing that video, I think they were straight men, but
yeah,
they were
just
exactly
a linear, aggressive approach to getting things done, whereas like the Islanders are sort of laid back. Not the Deleuzian time out of joint. I'm thinking of production analogies like voxels, pulses in volumes, these invisible data clouds, with virtual cinematography. The volumes are the performance capture spaces. I mean, there's a lot of similarities to like the pre-rendered maps in game engines. That time doesn't always kind of flow, it kind of percolates, so it's not like the river. No, it's not something that kind of incessantly kind of deviates from its equilibrium. It's still like waves of some co-present. I'm kind of seeing it as still stratified time as kind of being stitched, within a thicker time. So that would be similar to the middle AI image that's been trained on the left and right panels of the accelerated self and the accelerated D-self. But I think for these hypermirror scenes, then we have time that kind of floats in pulses. So the CGI extrusions and displacements there, that same pulse, but it's not time out of joint. It's just like a floating time stitched back in. But I don't know. Maybe I'm still seeing it as like this diffused sort of cloud. I mean, like news hits us like an atmosphere now. Well, if you keep thinking of the plane of consistency, or kind of pull it out into the volumes, so it can keep using that performance capture space as an analogy for it. It's like a capture for this non-measured time of like all these diverse rhythmic durations, which are nested in this polychronic plane, which I see sort of it undulates with its own sort of way. So there's pulses, those extruded durations. I don't know, dude. Pure event, maybe, you tell me. But there's the seamless shifts of the perspectives that kind of coagulate in those clouds. Despite all the disparate timelines and shifting focuses, they all kind of flow thickly together. The internet as a live stream for the last man at the end of history. Smhoulder.
A live picture of Notre Dame, the fire continuing to burn at the center of it, but clearly not at the level we had seen for the better part of an hour, as a heavy billow of smoke, a plume, rose up and across the city of Paris. We have seen pictures of the ground of people just standing there witnessing this with a sense of disbelief and sadness. And I think the French president spoke so well when he said it took a part of it's a part of Paris, it's a part of France that they are losing tonight. Such a part of this city's identity A city that's known a fair amount of tragedy. I noted earlier I'd been there a few years back for the series of terror attacks, the Bataclan Theater, the target of that. There was, before that, the Charlie Hebdo terror attack. So it is a city that has known its fair share of tragedy and heartbreak over the last several years.
Paris prosecutor has opened an official investigation to determine the cause of the fire. The prosecutor, along with Prime Minister Philippe, have arrived at the scene.
I'm now turning to the back of the cathedral, so I am just on the opposite side from the main plaza. In front of it, it is a terrible scene here. The roof has entirely collapsed.
And this is like 9/11, you know, like when the news hits like the public consciousness like an atmosphere, a wave,
the entire top, and
in
the
this
bottom
floating time.
Now that was from 6 minutes ago. After my last tweet, I got a couple Greg Favre. After my last tweet, I got a couple DMs asking me firefighter-related questions about the Notre Dame fire. Like most of you, I am watching from a world away, but if you're interested in some professional specific things, he says the first issue is how old churches are built. Heavy timber construction with large open spaces and very few, if any in a church like Notre Dame, fire stops. A fire stop is a passive fire protection system made up of various components and used to seal openings and spaces. He says if the fire started high in the structure, there's a chance the Paris fire can save the walls in the unimpinged areas of the cathedral. But the roof has basically been surrendered at this point. The peak, the lack of access, and the fire spread means most certain loss.
Tech company's gonna end up helping rebuild this.
Okay, let me just keep going down here.
It's similar, like kind of transcendent humanist cultural achievement. It's gonna get folded into.
He says even if aerial waterways, think hook and ladders with pre-piped hoses, could reach the roof line, it's difficult to see how they would get an angle that would get water on the fire. The side is just too high. So this means you have to put firefighters inside. Inside is a whole other problem. The primary option is large 2.5-inch fire hoses. These are heavy, difficult to maneuver, and against a fire like this, largely ineffective. That option also means placing responders on the inside as the roof is falling down around them, and we aren't talking shingles. This is a heavy timber construction. Let's see here. We don't know if the cathedral staff or construction workers or visitors, any of them were still there. Let's see here. Finally, especially this deep into the fire, he says, you have to be thinking about collapse of some or all of the structure. The steeple and roof have to go somewhere, and it's no guarantee this is straight down. Oh, well, they've collapsed, the steeple and roof. The walls are stout, but if weakened by fire and roofing timbers could come down. Are the streets in the collapse zone cleared? Well, they've cleared the island out. If a wall of fire comes down, what is the plan to fight that fire? My gut experience of the best case scenario here is something similar to Orthodox Cathedral of St. Sava fire in NYC, says Greg Favre, at least for the main part of Notre Dame that has been affected by fire. So this was a fire in New York City where that's what it looked like after the fire at that cathedral in New York City, where you can see a bunch of the stonework is there, but a lot of it's just gutted. So maybe it's going to look something like that. I don't know.
Dreaming about Notre Dame a few days ago.
Many of them the rush hour.
Oh, really? What about?
Well, I was just thinking that a books on like human accomplishment.
As their beloved cathedral goes up
and then
in
Notre Dame
flames.
and the
We're
Louvre.
joined now by
just
Simon Jones. Simon's another eyewitness who
Paris and Simon, what did you see?
Oh, wow.
Truly awful sight.
Yeah.
Just a devastating sight, and we know the role that the cathedral has played over the course of history of the cathedral to try to save them.
Because there's no reports yet, what I've seen on Facebook. It's just something posted on my timeline, but somebody posted on it that pray for Paris, blah, blah, blah. But I wasn't paying attention
So
that
people
much.
in the Philippines are all saying pray for Paris. Is that the hashtag?
for the cathedral.
They're all, so the majority of these people are going to be mourning something that they never got to experience. You know, there's like a weird hauntological lament.
So did you just, I haven't checked Asana, did you update the information there that I need to?
Began to break out, getting them down, and there's the spire coming down, and sometimes we watch this play out. One of the witnesses that we were talking to, but there are reports
sipping tea again, huh?
Turned dark and the sun has gone down in Paris.
Yeah, absolutely. The fire has gotten a bit smaller. We can see they finally are getting some water on what looks like the center of the cathedral, which is encouraging. But as the sky has gotten dark, the fire just looks so much more sinister, and you can see how much of the cathedral is gone already. I mean, we can see through sections that have been there for centuries that just aren't there anymore, and it's devastating to see. Just a minute ago at 9 o'clock, the Eiffel Tower started sparkling, which it does at the top of every hour, and that just made for a surreal and unsettling scene to see the Eiffel Tower sparkling as Notre Dame burned along the skyline next to it.
I mean, it's not necessarily Paris, it's just like the West in general, you know, the mythical West that's kind of disappearing. One hand, the West is trying to be open, and then it's obscuring and defacing its own sort of treasures, which no Westerners want to see. It might only exist as a VR ghost now. Yeah, because there was a point cloud model made. I think a game company, Ubisoft, have it.
Yeah.